Hello again. As promised, I'm back to do a second reading, and this one will be from the second Charlie Smithers book. It's Adventures in India. And the background blurb, book two of the best-selling Charlie Smithers collection, Flashman's alter ego returns. 4 years after Charlie returns from Africa, having survived a charging rhinoceros, ravenous crocodiles, fierce Maasai warriors, and evil slavers, not to mention inadvertently discovering the source of the Nile, we find him in India. Yes, that's right, his master, Lord Brampton, accompanied by his beloved guns, appalling aim, and the ever-faithful Charlie Smithers, has decided to go adventuring again. Unfortunately, not everything goes according to plan, and in an effort to prevent a war, our hero finds himself on a madcap expedition to the reclusive kingdom of Bhutan, saving the life of the ravishing Chirulakar along the way. With, amongst other things, ferocious tigers, sweltering jungles, snow-packed mountains, hostile natives, and the undying gratitude of a beautiful woman, Charlie has his work cut out for him. Now, a little background on this one. This is the tea scene, but in an earlier adventure in the book, Lord Brampton and Charlie save the life of Madame Parali, a beautiful native woman, and Lord Brampton is quite struck by her and has tea at her place. What he didn't know is that it was what the tea was made of, and maybe you can guess as the reading continues. And in the meantime, Charlie was contacted by Ram Singh, who was the gentleman to the Viceroy of India, that Lord Brampton was invited to a meeting the next day at Government House. So, I accompanied Lord Brampton to Government House later the next morning. I can't imagine why, as it was no great distance, and a household run under the stern eye of Ram Singh put my own poor service to shame. But at the appointed hour my master emerged from his rooms with his walking stick in one hand and his hat in the other, saying, "Come along, Smithers, don't dawdle," and sailed out the door with myself, quite caught unaware, racing far behind. He was already out on the street when I reached him, gazing at massive thunderclouds gathering directly overhead. "Damn fine weather," he declared. "Shan't need a cab," and then we were off. Minutes later we were caught in a monsoon. My lord gave no indication that he was aware. Indeed, he had this strange cherubic smile upon his face when he turned to me and asked, "See here, Smithers, what do you make of this Parali woman?" The downpour was drumming on my bowler, and I was cursing silently that I had not thought to bring an umbrella, but Lord Brampton's departure had been so sudden that there hadn't been time to consider. I ventured a sidelong glance and fancied that the whites of my eyes must be showing. Very correctly, I said that she seemed rather nice, if he didn't mind my saying so. "Don't mind a bit," he exclaimed, suddenly stopping with his arms outstretched, inhaling, roughly speaking, about a pint of water. "What a lovely day," he declared, in a voice that was positively happy, and squelched on, seemingly unaware of the deluge running from the brim of his topper. Left with no other recourse, I had one hand on my hat and the other clasping the lapels of my coat to my chin, blinking at the rain and doing my utmost not to lose my way as it cascaded down, obliterating everything from sight. "Fetching gal," he said, flicking his stick with a fair bit of swagger. "Fine figure of a woman, what?" With a care, and with water running down my spine, I allowed that La Parali did strike me as rather handsome, now that he had mentioned it. "Oh, posh!" he exclaimed. "She's a stunner, ain't she?" Completely sodden, I admitted that she was above average, appearance-wise, in a manner of speaking. "Did you know that she thinks my monocle makes me look distinguished?" I would not have been human if I had not been curious about my master's complete disregard for our situation, but for the moment managed to keep such curiosity to myself as it was not my place to inquire. Instead, I splashed unhappily along, and dutifully claimed ignorance of the regard that Madame had for my lord's eyepiece. He replied, "Well, she did." Then with pride, "She said quite distinguished, actually. What do you think of that, eh?" I said that the lady had a very discerning eye. "Yes," he agreed, well pleased. "Yes, she does, by Jove." We continued on with the rain coming down in sheets, and my lord steeped in his own private thoughts, for which I was grateful, hoping that privacy might be maintained. What my own thoughts were, you might well imagine. Why, just forget about being soaked to the skin. In all my days I could never remember my master speaking to me with such familiarity. What's more, I wasn't at all sure that it was proper. Well, you see what I mean, don't you? A master speaking to a servant like they were the best of chums was quite bad enough. But to be speaking about a lady, and with such intimacy too, well, it beggared belief, that's all. It really did. Then, "Popped round to call on her this morning," he said, which explained his absence when I had returned from tidying up his room. "Quite a proper thing to do, of course. She is under my care, after all." He explained in such a manner that had it been a commoner, I would have harbored doubt as to whether observing the proprieties had ever been his intention. "Late riser," he said. "My lord?" "Amrit. That is to say, Madame Charlie. Damn late it was. Almost 9. 9, sir?" "9 o'clock, man." "Oh, I see, sir. Or perhaps it was 8:30 or after 8. Hard to say, really." While I was absorbing this information and doing my best not to, as well as generous amounts of rainwater, he continued, "I say, fetching a tire." He said it with a relish. He said it with such relish that it quite alarmed me. "Your Grace?" "For the boudoir," he explained, which of course did little to quiet my unease. "Damn fetching togs some of these Indian ladies wear," and his face grew more trance-like than ever. "Can't see how it'd be comfortable to sleep in, though." Pause. "Must keep crawling up the—" He gestured anatomically, and I quickly looked away. "She invited me in, quite gracious of her, I must say." By now even my thoughts had become drenched, so I continued on at his side, voicing my disapproval in silence, as it were. Fat lot of good it did me, too. "For tea," he said, his face crinkling in a most unsettling fashion. Dear little thing, I hadn't the heart to tell her that I'd already dined, and that 11s wouldn't be for hours. Small oversight, really. How was she to know? "Indeed, sir." By now we were both thoroughly soaked through and through, or I was at least. My lord, on the other hand, "Charming conversation. Most charming. Beyond doubt a lady of quality. Good tea as well." I replied, "I'm sure, sir," no longer able to keep the misery from every facet of my bearing. But as bad as things were, they suddenly got worse. Out of nowhere, Lord Brampton's character suddenly changed in a way that quite drove the notion that we were standing virtually naked in the middle of a monsoon clear from my mind. It was decidedly more, for lack of a better word, I shall say, lascivious. In a low, husky voice he said, "Lovely perfume, too." Then, "I say, Smithers," and he actually leered, "there's precious little that the frogs could teach this bunch about scent, what?" Bless me, he even went so far as to dig a conspiratorial elbow into my ribs. "It got me going, if you know what I mean, hey?" Astonished, I could only gasp, "Really, sir, I don't think—" But my lord was on a tangent and would not be denied. All that flesh just oozing out of her bodice. He shuddered dreadfully, and those pouting lips of hers, in a tone that left me dumbfounded. And that fine fat rump, too, by Jove. Then, as God's my witness, he followed this shocking statement with a sound so lecherous that it is impossible to record on paper. "My lord, this had to be the bloody limit." And all the while her looking at me with those come-hither eyes, he swore savagely. Wicked, that's what they were. Quite delightfully wicked, I must say. I could take it no longer. With a great effort I pulled myself together and finally had the wit to ask, "Sir, are you well?" "Never better, Smithers, never better." He laughed something shocking. "Delightful gal. Gad, can't remember ever feeling in such trim." If the, if the truth be told, neither could I. I wondered if it might be the sun. In sudden desperation, I pressed, "My lord, you are not yourself." "Ain't I, though?" He bellowed laughter, a sound that can only be described as amazing. "I should like to know who is then," and he evidently considered this so humorous that he had to stop for air, draking in huge gasps with various scandalous expostulations regarding Madame's charms in between. I was completely at a loss. Here we were on our way to meet the most important man in India, to discuss an affair of state no less, only to find my master had suddenly gone barking mad. Why, it wouldn't do at all. I glanced around for aid, but the street was empty in the pouring rain. Sensible of the city's inhabitants, though that might be, I was left with no recourse. Gently as humanly possible, I said, "Come along, sir," and taking him firmly by the arm, guided him to a nearby bench. To my relief, he did not remonstrate nor deride me for laying my hand upon his person, but allowed himself to be led as meekly as a child, with only the occasional titter to show for his previous behavior. Reaching the bench, I sat him down as gentle as could be, and there we were, him sitting and me standing in a torrential downpour. I had to shout over the rain to be heard, "Sir, have you taken spirits?" I knew this to be unlikely, as the sun, wherever it was, had yet to cross over the yardarm, an observance that my master seldom failed to follow. Indeed, this was confirmed only a moment later. I bent over, putting my ear to his mouth. "No spirits," he sighed, still not himself, but at least several decibels further down the scale. "Just tea. Wonderful, wonderful tea." His tone continued to subside. "Marvelous concoction, quite different from anything at home." The tea. I asked, "Was there anything in the tea, sir?" He regarded me all bleary-eyed. "You should know, Smithers. Milk and a squeeze of lemon, as always." He thought that this was funny too, but instead of laughter, all that emerged from him was a rugged squeak. "No, sir, I meant, was there anything else?" "Anything else?" Peering carefully through the rain, I noticed that his pupils had become quite enlarged. "Yes, sir. Did Madame put anything else in your tea?" "Madame?" His mouth had sagged open, a string of drool mingled with the rain. "Yes, sir, Madame Perali." "Madame Perali?" "Yes, sir." "Do you mean Amrita?" he asked, as if at a name half remembered. "Amrita Perali." "Indeed I do, sir." As if by magic, the question disappeared from his face, to be replaced by a smile that was almost gentle. "Amrita," he sighed, "such a lovely child." Then he looked at me, and the smile became complete blissful innocence. Did I mention that I popped by for tea? And that's the end of that reading. And just before I go, I just want to wish each and every one of you a happy Easter.